Happy Thursday. This is Kylie J.N.S. with Nakhti University, and we are going to be discussing funerary rites. And we're taking like a multifaceted approach to this topic. So we're going to be talking about historical funerary rites and convergence between even different cultures and ethnicities, will you, or bloodlines. And so we're going to discuss in the context of American funerary rites, just a more concretized uh, synopsis or a more concretized idea about how we do funerary rites. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this topic was because, there's a lot of unfortunately commercialization. It's kind of like how Christmas is in terms of the consumer engine behind holidays. That kind of crept into the funeral business, as we know, and in terms of the consumerism, the commercialization, the despiritualization of funerals, just and even in American culture. And so I was like, well, I grew up at times when family members would pass, there would be struggles to sometimes pay for the funeral, or there would be arguments, or sometimes if the anchor is, a prominent person in a family, like a big mama or an elder that passed away that kept the family together, sometimes, it can be actual family breakdowns in terms of people not speaking with one another and whatnot, and then disagreements on how to do, you know, funeral arrangements. And so, in the context of Negro culture and Black American culture, I was thinking, I said, we have different types of funerary rites or different types of approaches. You have the New Orleans funeral style that's outside, it's like a celebration. Then you have more of it, some of the Islamic ideas around burials, and then very basic approaches, such as cremation, and then even some of Commission style with embalming and some of the funerary rites around Kemet. You can find it in Black American culture. So we're going to discuss each level of that in each particular culture. And so, if you're listening and you've been to a funeral, you're probably going to see some of this familiarity, as far as some of the things we'll discuss. And what we're doing today is just concretizing it for cultural reasons, to keep it more simple, to keep it uh still with spiritual understanding, and understanding that, this is about memory of our loved ones, um dignity of the loved ones and their transition, just something very basic and simple: dignity and memorial of that life transitioning into another aspect of itself, or dimension, heaven, whatever you think they go to. I'm not here to proselytize on where to go. We're just talking about, like, as Negroes, what type of when we think of running a tight ship around our culture, it has to be more structured, and that goes down from even the way you make your music, what you value, what you don't value, your uh your code of conducts, um your languages, the way you approach one another. Funerary rites is a part of culture. Funerary rites it's definitely a part of culture. And so that's why we're discussing that. It's a part of the Black American Research and Cultural Policy Center. And so that's why, I'm like, well, there's different types of ways we do it. Me growing up, I don't go to funerals anymore, but when I was younger, I went to a couple funerals, and it was pretty, you get a service, there's a casket, but what I realized was a lot of ostentatiousness in terms of wanting to impress, I presume to be the dead person, or even the living family members of these people at the funerals. And sometimes, that ostentation can break the bank. Just like how people go into debt for weddings, people go into debt for funerals. And I think that's kind of quite ridiculous. Hey, Bowly, how you doing? No, you're not joining late, girl. We only been on for 5 minutes, so you're not joining late at all. I appreciate you. Happy Thursday. Yeah, it's only been 5 minutes we've been on here, girl. Um, And so let me share my screen as a matter of fact, so that you guys can see some of these funerary rites we're going to discuss. And again, this is not trying to dictate what people should do, because we're going to cover uh a varied of funerary rites that we see in Black America and within Negro culture. So you may fall under one of the, we're going to discuss obviously some of the Islamic burial, New Orleans style, Jacobean style. We're going to discuss the Cremation style, and then American Indian Algonquian style. And so, and then we're going to just wrap it up with some basics of whatever style you need. If you don't want a name for it, you don't have to have a name for it. The basic tenets of what we're aiming for. But I thought it was pretty clever. You may see some similarities between, especially when it comes to like some of the Islamic and Jacobean style, and then you may notice some of the Eastern and New Orleans similarities. And so that's all we're doing. It's just discussing ideas. It ain't nothing that I say, is like, oh, it's law. It's just, I just think it's cool to, when we think about culture and structuring culture in terms of running this tight ship, as we so to speak. When we talk about, you know, preventing ethnocide, and when we talk about delineation, it was about cultural collation, and it's about that understanding of pouring back into the self in terms of self-love, high self-esteem, self-pride, a cultural shift, not really involving other people. It had nothing to do with us versus them, or a competitive thing. It's more to do with pouring back into our ancestors, pouring back into our culture, nature, in tune with nature, in tune with planet earth, in tune with the frequency, understanding vibration, and tuning into that higher frequency, which is what those of us that's in the know, we get that. And so we see it through the distractions, we see through the limitations of this matrix system, and we kind of like, this ain't really, it's got to be, when we talk about living and soul, when we talk about even going into this different shift of coming out of isolation and connecting back with one another, coming to the realization, and a lot of people about to realize this, about that dead internet theory, and how 50% is bots, and then the other 50%, less than 50% maybe actual humans, and then now they're talking about patenting the digital ghost of loved ones, so turning some of these loved ones into bots, and they're may be passed on, but they still can be active. Y'all want to watch out for that, because they there's literally a patent for that. And so all this unnatural stuff. So there's a group of us that says, well, we're not really about to just follow people off a cliff, or follow the, whatever people is trying to push on us that goes against our better judgment, sound wisdom, sound judgment, sound reason. So we not, we don't allow people to dictate our thoughts. We are in a driving seat at all times of our own consciousness and our own destiny and our own realities. And so that's what we telling the folks today, as the Nakhti order. That's all it is. So we shared it on, let me make sure it's sharing here. Let me see if is there a way to make this bigger? It's kind of, let's see, is there a way to make it okay? That looks a lot bigger. Now let's share on Rumble too. Okay, let's share there. Funerary rites. Let me make sure that the screen is sharing. Okay, just give me a moment if you're on Rumble. Okay, there we go. So now you can see it on Rumble too. And so let's discuss our first funerary rite. We're gonna look at some cool New Orleans style too, some New Orleans style funerals. I'm not trying to get copyright, so we may not play the music or anything, but I want to show you guys how it looks, because that's the different style. It's still Negro culture, but like for people up north, that's even from, even if your bloodline goes back to Georgia, Alabama, North Carolinas, that's still very different, even from Negroes that come from Alabama or North Carolina, because North Carolina has a specific burial style too, and we're going to cover that. If you're from, Curetech or the Algonquian areas, where there's a lot of Indian burial bombs, a lot of Black Americans are on those plantations / reservations, however you want to look at that. And so we're going to discuss some of those differences. And that's just in North Carolina compared to what you see in Louisiana, how they do their funeral styles. And I just think that's so dope. And so we're covering a lot of culture today, even though we're talking about funerals and death. Oh my gosh. It's supposed to be fun and lighthearted. It's not supposed to, to be doom and gloom, but it's about culture too. What we hearing people talking about, they breaking the bank, people is raising GoFundMe's just to, or making plates just to pay for funerals and stuff. And it's like, well, what are y'all trying to do? It's supposed to be something real simple. Cremation, wooden casket, because you don't want, these things have to decompose back into the earth and turn into the trees and turn into the next cycle of life, fertilizer for the next cycle of life. And so I'm trying to understand why people paying $10,000 for caskets and coffins. And now people do what they want, because that come from the commission style. You know how they used to do with all the King Tut and all that shit. So let's be real, that is a thing. But when you hear people not having it and then trying to do that, then why do you feel that pressure? Is more so for that, because I grew up seeing that pressure. I've seen where even um 10,000 for a casket, and we was in the hood, 10,000 for $3,000 suit. You want to put the best wig on and going out, gator shoes, alligator shoes, and jewelry stuff. We ain't really, it's like, did they ask for that? They did. They soul is gone. It's just a rotten corpse that you're dealing with. So and then they may not even fuck with you, because a lot of times some of them stay around and linger around. Some of them are out. So you can't just, you may be doing all that for nothing, or who you trying to impress. Sometimes, you see them trying to impress other people, and that don't be for their dead loved one. It be the style on motherfuckers, and if we not in that day and age, we want to style, making sure that it's in tune with nature. That body is going to turn into the tree. They even got some of the funerals, funerary burial rites, where the body is wrapped into like a soil, like an egg pot with some soil that makes a tree, and then it's planted into the ground. So you got that type of method too. Very cool, novel things that is really traditional. It ain't novel. It's real old, but that's just the simple way, something that's affordable. Because every time, like even with the tiny home movement, tiny homes was supposed to be 10, 20K, 5K, 30K at the most. I've seen they had a tiny home for $500,000. I said, why do y'all try to make everything, I'm like, for one, I got the documentation and evidence to prove to you. Tiny homes was created by the Negro. That's nothing but slave quarters, or modest living. Not even, you can't even use the word slave quarters, because I found documentation where, and land, it wasn't plantations. These were just Black people who owned their own land. I got the video archive footage and everything. And they had what you would call a tiny home on 3 acres of land with canning. You know how people had them canning jars all over the place? They had canning pantries and tiny homes. It looked like a actual tiny home that you would see today. And I had the video footage from the 1800s, and it was on their land. They said he got 3 acres of land that they was showing. They was called, the Negro and the whatever. And they said they got um 3 acres of land, but look at this little tiny shed that they built. They just wanted something simple. That was the tiny home, but they had all these fruits and veggies. They had um the cotton gin press, all these different inventions for, like irrigation and plumbing, and then canning. They had a pantry, but they just used to can all this stuff for preserve all their fruits and veggies. It was really sophisticated. Textile making. I got to show y'all this video. They were showing how they was had textiles making these clothes. And this was some bad stuff, man. So I said, everybody, the tiny home movement. And I'm like, have y'all ever saw like 1920s, 1930s, 40s footage of Negroes on their own land? That was the tiny home. That's where it come from. The tiny shit. I said, that's just what that's exactly what it is. Then they talking about, everybody, we got to go back to canning. We got to preserve all this stuff. And I'm looking, I'm like, did you ever see that footage? I thought that was so funny though, seeing like, like these tiny, but nonetheless, you see today, they want to charge $500,000 for a tiny home. It's like now y'all getting stupid. Like it's like y'all touch y'all nose to spite y'all face. Y'all know good and hell well a tiny home don't need to be over anywhere over 25K. It's really, to be honest, no tiny home. I mean, we talking about, if you get the bells and whistles, you want to use all these, exotic materials. Probably if you're doing cherry oak wood and all this crazy shit, marble floors and heated floors and tiles. I'm pretty sure it can get up there, 85K. You got some unique things, I could see that. But 500K, and we talking about 500 square feet, 500K, and they trying to make this something glamorous. This is why you having housing issues and housing difficulties. The tiny home is not glam. It's not. It's just efficiency, cost effectiveness, intentional downsizing, and intentional stoicism and intentional minimalism. That's it. It's very intentional. You know, it's for people that value a more, honestly, more of their time, to be honest, because they're not trying to. They want to keep cost of living just real simple. That's what it's supposed to be, and it ain't no shame in that. Why y'all trying to make it it's so glamorous for you, and now you got to charge $500,000, and so that's that type of nonsense. And they was doing that with the funeral stuff too. Let me get back on topic. They were doing that with the funerary rites, stuff that's what a cremation that's like less than $1,000 if you gonna do regular cremation, wooden box, to put your family in the ground or whatever. But no, they want 10,000 for the casket, 3,000 for the suits. You got to pay for the venue, for the service, caterers, for the food and whatnot. You got to pay for the pallbearers, or what's the other one? The eulogy and the music and all. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if you got it, you got it. You can't hate nobody if they got the extra, to do all that. But I'm saying, when I saw people, arguing about the funds, trying to raise funds to pay for that type of stuff, stressing about it, you know even people will pay in advance, you know 10, 20K for their tombstone. They will pay in advance too, because they didn't want to burden their families. When they go, they want everything taken care of. They don't want nobody having I've seen some wild stuff, and then, for those who don't know, they even got grants for cremations. Even in New York State, I know if your family member die, you can't afford whatever. You there's a grants all over that you can apply for. You really can, and they'll pay for the $1,300 cremation. I think some of the grants is like 1,300 or whatever. But to be honest, and I think some might be 500, 600, but that's all you would need anyways. 1,300 is the average cremation cost, and even that's too expensive, if you ask me. But whatever, because if we was living how we supposed to live, it's really supposed to be free. That just a cremation. I mean, you on your own land, you either gonna cremate them or you just gonna put them in the ground. So really, it's supposed to be free, and your ceremony and you probably pay, for your caterers for your food. That probably run you a couple $100, but it's supposed to be something that's manageable. And so, nonetheless, let's talk about these funerary rites. So the first one is generally the preparation once the body first dies. Obviously, you treat the body with immense respect, and it's a dignity thing. And the work of morticians, and I've never been into that work. I'm not gonna act like I know anything about it. But the work of mortician, and I listened to it at least three, and I actually visited, as a part of a school project, believe it or not. They had a school project, and we had to visit a funeral home, um as a part of, we went like as like a field trip. It was so weird. And we had to talk with one of the morticians that did embalming. And this was a Black American um funerary home in the ATL area, and they were really prominent. Like they had did like some of MLK family members, and a lot of the civil rights. They were prominent funerary homes. We went to go talk with him, and he was showing us about the embalming process, and we actually did get to see the bodies too that they were working on, making them really nice, and what kind of suits they had on them, and as far as clothing and whatnot. And they were showing us that we was able to see it. And I thought it was really he was really old school. He was so Southern, this guy. He was so old school because I would never forget, we noticed the women would have makeup on, like some of the dead bodies of the females would have the makeup, but then when we with the males, they didn't have any makeup. And so, um, I remember the professor had asked, let me just make sure that my sound is good. I remember the professor had asked, how come he does it? Because his eyes was real dark, and you could, that sunken in look, the body. And he said, well, how come he doesn't have his? He got to get his makeup done, right? He got to get his makeup done. And it was a black man that was laying in a coffin, and I remember the mortician just looked like his mouth dropped and was like, "Oh, no, 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 no! We never put makeup on the men. These are men." And he said, we don't put makeup on the men for the burial. We just, do their face, make it look nice, maybe comb the hair or whatever, but we never put makeup on the men. And with the girls, he said he puts makeup on the girls. And I remember, that cultural clash, because it wasn't that many black kids on the trip. It was like me and maybe 3 or 4 others. But I remember, he was like, "Oh, no, 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 we would never put makeup on the men. The men don't get makeup, only the women." And the professor was looking like, "Huh?" He's looking like, "Well, why can't the men get makeup?" It's just for, to smooth it out. So, but that was just that particular funerary home. That's actually, not the case for others, but that one was a real Negro traditional, like you walk in, it was given, it was really nice. I appreciated it, seeing that. And that was just one of the field trips that we went on. And then I've listened to other, even some female morticians, and some of the female morticians, they were Black American, and they stressed the importance of the spiritual dignity and of affording the dead that respect, and how it was a spiritual thing for them to even get into that line of work. And so I thought that was really interesting. Like that was a spiritual thing, to like a calling. It wasn't something to degrade, those who work with the dead, to, as far as the morticians, that wasn't like degrading work. I noticed there's a peculiar personality of those who do that type of work, even amongst the women and men. I've noticed, it's something I've studied. I think it's fascinating. I noticed that they tend to be introverted or socially aloof. Sometimes, uh, like a softness, or either like really intelligent, um and like evolve spiritually, like have an understanding of the dead, and the grieving process, and being able to work with people. And so honestly, low key, always admire people that could do that type of work, as far as dressing the body, washing the body down, and whatnot. There have been complaints though about certain funeral homes, and the way it's just treated like a business. It's treated like a business. Is the spiritual aspects are removed from it. And I've seen it, I've we were, again, a part of that class. We were talking about like the commercialization of funerals and the consumerism around funerals. And so that was very eye opening, believe it or not. There's a lot of material on it. There's even books on it. And so it is a real thing, where like the average funeral cost is, it's just always on the rise. And we're not in that type of economy right now to be blowing 10K on coffins and shit. And so, we want to keep it back to the basics, what we know culturally, what we know historically, and what feels comfortable in our range. So generally, the body is treated with immense respect. It is often washed, sometimes with by a family member. Um, Now, depending on your culture, sometimes people use oils, frankincense and myrrh, um, hyssop. You may wash the body with hyssop and then put the frankincense and myrrh oil on the body. Sometimes I heard of sea salt. I've heard of like a smudging. What else? Milk, ghee, and honey to wash the body. That's one that I know is very common. A certain type of milk, ghee, and honey. You can then you dress the body in clean clothes or wrap it in a white cloth, and then sometimes you would place the head facing south or toward, if you're Muslim, maybe towards the Mecca. I'm not gonna get into like how to place the body and all that stuff because I don't care to even, it's just not important. Whatever way you want to face the body is your business. But generally, there's some sort of washing of the body, and then there's some sort of maybe perfumes added or oils added, resins added, and then dressed in some sort of white cloth or clothes. The next style that's pretty popular is a cremation. And so that is a traditional and that is a preferred method, symbolizing the release of the soul and body's return in certain cultures. In certain cultures, and even in a lot of indigenous culture in Black America, it is believed that the cremation, you return the body to the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And so, um, sometimes the eldest son or the male relative usually acts as the lead mourner, lighting the funeral pyre. And so this is very, very basic. That's just a very basic one. Sometimes the body is put in a casket, a wood casket, and placed in the ground as well. But at the very basic level, as soon as possible, as soon as you can, in terms of burial services, and then washing of the body, dressing the body with oil, and then some sort of clothes, white cloth. And so again, it could be milk, ghee, honey, hyssop, sea salt bath, however, whatever bath that you feel is comfortable to you, and then whatever oils you feel is relevant: frankincense and myrrh, olive oil, uh anointed oil, whatever people use these days. And or sometimes people use ghee and honey, like ghee over the eyes is also a common practice. So the next one, we'll talk about Islamic funerary rites. And so um there's a lot of Muslim in Black America, and so they emphasize modesty, dignity, and speed. So the burials are usually within 24 hours of death, without cremation. And so there is a ritual washing by a same gender family member. So that's pretty fast, 24 hours. Sometimes people, that's why I would say for Negroes, I would say as soon as you can. Try to get it within 24 hours to up to 14 days. Cause I do know those who do commission style funerals, they tend to do 7 days, 14 days. I've seen it. And so that's why I would say as soon as possible, just do it as soon as possible, given your funerary customs. And now, if you do embalming, you could probably wait. You could do it. You can get away with 14 days. You can get away with 7 days. If you're not doing embalming, you have to do it within that 72 hours, generally speaking. And so, um, another aspect of Islamic burial is immediate action. So death is followed by closing the eyes and mouth and binding the jaw and covering the body with a clean sheet. And then the washing. The body is ritually washed an odd number of times, usually three, by members of the same gender. So males should be doing males, females should be doing females. Then there's a shrouding. And so the body is wrapped in simple white unstitched cloth sheets. And then there's usually some sort of prayer, um, and then a burial. And so the bodies are buried as soon as possible, ideally without a casket. Now, I don't think is Islam culture, they don't really do cremation. I don't think they believe in cremation, if I'm not mistaken. And so, hey, big time Ben Bay, and on Instagram, and Patty XXO, and Simba Arnold. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Let's talk about New Orleans. And so New Orleans, this is still the Black American energies. You'll see influences of American Indian culture and even some of West Keebalan culture in their funerary rites. You'll see is a lot of jazz and the New Orleans funerary rites. And so it's very unique. It's very celebratory. You got again, you got some of that Creole mixture, indigenous, West Keelan, American indigenous culture, and so it sometimes it features a brass band, and they lead a procession from the funeral service to the cemetery, almost like a parade. And then sometimes they could do slow, somber music to upbeat jazz music, allowing the mourners to second line. And so that means this dance in honor of the deceased of the deceased life. And so the key elements of the New Orleans funeral for Black America is the procession. So you got that brass band, you got the hearse, they play slow traditional hymns like Near My God to Thee, and then they're going to the cemetery. And then after the body is laid to rest or cut loose, the band plays fast, upbeat spirituals. And this gives, the ability for friends and family, any of the community members to join in dancing. They wave handkerchiefs, they got umbrellas. Sometimes you'll see them dancing with the coffins above their heads too. And so it's a celebration of life, versus like showing sadness. And they celebrate with joy, music, and dance. And so that is New Orleans style all day, and we'll play New Orleans in a bit. So the next one is Jacobean, and so these is for Negroes that's usually around Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina. That is not into ostentation, but more so in alignment with the Hebrew style, a mixture of Hebrew and American indigenous style. And so the Jacobean funerary rites, it is usually swift, simple burial. They may have some elements of Cremation style in here, and with the embalming or using a traditional, a different type of a coffin. And so it could be within 24 hours. Let me put hours to 14 days timeline, generally speaking, depending on because the Jacobean there's a lot of admixture of things just in general. And so they emphasize respect for the deceased and comfort for mourners. So the core traditions include washing. So that's called tahara, washing the body, burial in a plain wooden casket without embalming. Now, Jacobean Negroes do believe in cremation as well. They believe in even sometimes going home services and family gatherings, and even dinners are permitted as well. And so that can include a service such as like psalms or musical compositions. And so if a Jacobean decides to go with more cremation style, they generally want their ashes dispersed into rivers, oceans, forests, jungles, natures, their personal land, or a specific site that they may say. If their family member wants to hold on to the ashes, sure, but generally they just would like it, just put it in a river, the oceans, the forests, the jungles. And cremation is usually a preferred method to go as well. Um, if you're doing a burial, if they prefer a burial, you want to wash the body, use your resins, frankincense, and myrrh, ghee. You may want to also wash the body with hyssop, and then you can shroud it with white linen, and then put it in a wood casket or a tree pod. And so another aspect of that is the ceremony. So that's just like when you go to the funeral, you call Brian, saying on Buffalo, they used to have a popular one called Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. You call Brian K. Lewis, and the pastor, or they give a eulogy, they have a song. That's pretty typical. The ceremony is optional. It can be public or very private. And again, for Jacobean, if a Negro that tends to be more of a Judahite heir, the ceremony is optional. You don't have to have it. Also, family dinners are optional. You don't have to have it. But I do know, growing up in Black America, we would typically have some sort of lots of dinners, to be honest, lots of family dinners. Um, During the time that person has passed, because you got other people that want to cook for the family, and then people that after the ceremony, there's usually a dinner. And I've seen it quite a bit, almost at every funeral that went to growing. I didn't go to much, but I'm just saying growing up. And so That's optional though, because some people they want things very private and very minimalist, you know. And so it depends on your family dynamics. And we also want to emphasize no family fighting. And then another aspect of the Jacobean is the annual anniversary of the death celebration for some. So some will do an annual anniversary or remembrance, whether that be maybe even going to where their burial site is on their birthdays or when they die, or given just a celebration. You know, sometimes a cookout. You know, especially if it's like summer or something like that, they may get a cookout, and that's also optional, but that is something that you could typically see. Now the other style within uh the culture is more of a commission style. Now this is just, I would say, a broader American style in terms of a modern day version of mummification. So when you do the embalming, that's the embalming fluid with the formaldehyde, and you flush the blood out, or sometimes you may stuff the body, take out the organs and all that stuff, because those organs used to go in canopic jars, you know, and the canopic jars is also about organ removal. And those, each canopic jar would contain, you know, like the liver, the lungs, the stomach, the intestines, um, of these canopic jars. And those jars would be have a guardian placed over them. So obviously we don't do all that today, but you see sometimes organ removal. And you know, in a traditional mummification, the brain would be extracted through the nose with the hook. And so I have heard of people doing that even in recent times, but I don't know if they quite do. I do know they do the embalming fluid on the body, and that is mummification, believe it or not. It may not be traditional mummification as far as the wraps, but that's where it comes from. And the idea of bombing a body comes from Kemet. Okay. And the body was preserved to serve as a permanent hold for the soul, Ka and Ba, a practice perfected over thousands of years. And so that's why I don't get into that Ka and Ba, the Book of the Dead, funerary rites. I do think if people are going to do that, they should be well versed and well educated in what that process is, and you know, in terms of, you know, the Book of the Dead and whatnot. Now, I don't think people get that intricate, but when you look at our funeral, like being buried 6 feet under and within that rectangular box, you know, that that is funerary rites that come from the Book of the Dead and Kemet. I don't know if people know that, but it's true. And so what I'm saying is, you want to kind of get up out of those type of practices, because you really don't know what you're practicing, and you don't, you know, especially because it's half-assed. There's no more canopic jars. You're not removing the brain through the nose anymore. You're not preserving the organs properly. The body fluid, the embalming fluid is not the same as it was in Kemet. So you want to start to question using that particular style as Black America, when you don't have all of you don't know if you're being hoodwinked pretty much because of the science around how Westerners bury the bodies today, you know, with, you know, the metal coffin, you know, get this grand coffin, put it 6 feet down and all this, with this particular plot of square land with other, in the cemetery with other energies and Masonic grids and ley lines and whatnot. You don't, you know what I mean? It's a lot. And so that's why I said, well, you want to get back to more of the simple, keeping it simple and having a little more agency on how you bury, even if this is something as simple as a cremation, and just dump the ocean, the rivers, the ashes in the ocean or something. You know what I mean? It's a more freeing, you know, just it's real simple, don't cost you much, it's very private. You ain't got to, you know what I mean? And so that's where we want the Negro to start kind of focusing on, or Black Americans. We want to more focusing on that type of more of the simplicity things that of the freer nature. Now, if you're going to do commission style, I'm not saying don't do it if you know that's your practice. Like there are people that's their bloodline. So, but I'm just saying you're gonna have to read the Book of the Dead and read those funerary rites and apply them with, Anubis is over funerary rites. Tahuti has access to scribes as it relates to death as well. And so you want to just know what you're doing, because those practices believe it or not, are in modern day, even when they go to the church, as they say, and the Christians with the, they actually are doing Commission style burial rites. Whether they admit that or not, whether they know it or not, most of them don't know it, but it is. It's very obvious. And so that's why, we go back to keeping it simple. That's why we talked about some of the Islamic, we talked about the Western, we talked about Jacobean, not Western, Eastern rather, with the ghee and honey and milk. That's Eastern, so for those who got Dravidian blood in Black America, that probably be something you'll gravitate towards, the ghee, for those that's more of Islamic, we cover some of the Islamic. For those that's New Orleans, more of indigenous, more wild, like to party, have fun, we covered the New Orleans. For those that is more like the simple, be more back into nature or up in rivers and oceans and cremated or simple tree pod casket, that's for the Jacobean Negroes. And now this one is more the Commission. That's the ones that like they like the flowers everywhere, the gold casket, the jade casket, purple suits and the church hats and all that. That's Commission style. The embalming and putting trinkets in the coffin with your loved ones and all that. Organ removal. Okay. But again, if you're going to do that, you're going to, the body has to be treated with resins and oils too. And it's usually wrapped in hundreds of yards of them of linen bandages. You also, in Commission style, the body and organs were covered in natron salt for roughly 40 days to remove moisture. Okay. And then you got to remember the weighing of the heart ceremony. So if you're going to be doing, some of the Commission style, you just want to have more knowledge because you're supposed to do some protections. Spells from the Book of the Dead used to protect the heart, intelligence, and memory and guide the soul through even places like the underworld or different realms. Um, Grave goods and offerings. I've seen Black Americans give a lot of goods and offerings for the grave, including food, clothing, furniture, and tools. Wooden models of scenes like baking or brewing were often included. And so you see that practice being done today. And see, people don't even know that that's a Commission style right to put, like if your family love playing spades, you put a deck of cards in there with them, certain foods that they like with them. Um, People put all types of stuff inside the graves and the coffins or whatnot. So that comes from Kemet. A lot of people don't know that. And so that's also a style though. So within your body of knowledge or frame of reference, you would choose what type of funerary rites feel comfortable for you. The next one is Algonquian style. So that's more of American Indian. And this tends to be like in North Carolina, especially along Currituck, which is where my ancestors been buried for for hundreds of years. And it's a bomb site. And it's a significant archaeological site. It's dated roughly around AD 1350. And so that revealed Algonquian burial along North Carolina coast. And so what they would do though was have mass graves. So there was a more organized communal approach to death, such as like families being buried together. So burial one, it contained the remain of 58 individuals, including complete skeletons and bundle burials. And so it's like you're burying people together. So the tribes probably buried together. Another one is like that you'll see is that they had um grave goods, such as like a necklace or shells and beads, copper beads discovered near, even certain remains. There was a lot of cremation, and they were wrapped in a mat of rush grasses, and they were dated back to AD 295 to 425. And so there was diverse burial practices, but you see the cremation, you see mass graves, still very simple, and that's an aspect of the bomb site as far as Algonquian uh, methods. And so I would say the biggest thing though that should be emphasized, is dignity. Like whatever you decide to do, with your loved ones or with our loved ones. I think the main thing we think of is affording that body dignity. Making sure the burial services, I would say, going forward, align with earth, something that's simple that can decompose the body. Maybe the chemicals today that they embalming, do you want that? Is that as environmental as what they were doing in Kemet? You may not want formaldehyde all on, you got to think of the chemicals too. What kind of, does this formaldehyde high frequency? Is that binding on some level? You know? Um, and so you want to think about those things. Maybe it's just better to go with a cremation, or just, a body in the wood casket, with the traditional washing, dressing with oils, and dressing with clothes, and something very simple. Um, is going back to fertilize the cycle of life on some level. You want it as fast as possible. So if it's 24 hours, 72 hours, 7 days to 14 days, I would say it depends, because if you're doing embalming, you could probably get away with the 14-day, 7 day. Or if you want a big funeral, big service for them, you got to do more planning and logistics. And, they got to get back home or whatever, that type of thing. If you're doing something more big, it's probably going to take longer. Versus if you're more simple, you do 24 hours, or even if it's a certain belief system, that it has to be done within 24 to 72 hours. And then generally some sort of memorial, some type of way to remember them. That could be obituaries, eulogies, um, archives. I'm gonna take this word digital out, but sometimes archive, annual celebrations, graveyard upkeep. Some people do tombstones, and big type of memorial, whatever. So that's up to you. Don't feel the need for vanity, vexation, and ostentation, as far as like feeling pressure to try to impress people. And, well, I mean, you can't impress the dead; they dead. So you're not impressing them. They probably don't even care even to show up to their own funeral, because they know it's a bunch of funky fake ass people there anyways. People that was all talking shit, hating, all types of stuff, that's gonna show up and now crying and screaming, acting like they was really locked in with the person. That's why I don't go to funerals. I find funerals to be extremely low frequency. Um, and I'm not talking about because the person is dead. I'm talking about the energy of the place itself, all the different energy in one room. And then like if you go to a wake, it's a lot of Masonic jargon around wakes. When you go to wakes or you go to funerals, and even when you show up to the cemetery, they put the body in the ground and all that. There's a lot of, to me, I see, it's very ritualistic. And so I kind of always knew that it was tapping into some sort of it's not like a portal or a dimension. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but a certain type of energy that just never felt comfortable with me, to me, because you know, it just seemed too like uh, I don't know, like something about like the whole process of the pallbearers, and then that 6 feet in that rectangle, and these bodies in this something about that just doesn't appeal to me. It just doesn't feel spiritual. It doesn't make me feel like I'm saying goodbye. So I just never liked that feeling. And then the wake was always weird too. You've seen people that that they wasn't cool and they was little. I've seen it even as a kid. I'm like, they didn't fuck with you. And you see that same person, or you didn't fuck with them, and you see that same person screaming, rolling all on the floor, hanging all on the coffin. And it's like a place where people want to get attention. Like now people just want attention or act like they knew you. Clout. It's like low key clout chasing. Like it's like clout chasing before social media existed. When you think about it, how people clout chase on social media. To me, back in my day, and I'm only 34, but like I felt like that was funerals was the clout chase. Like that was the way people would go to clout chase. I mean, there's other ways people, to like to be seen. That's like how people want to stumping while out at church every Sunday. You got that one person that just always, he's the only one that get the spirit. And they jumping the hope and holler and all that stuff. and that kind of attention seeking. And so that's what funerals always kind of reminded me of, attention seeking. People crying when you didn't fuck with the person. You low key happy they dead. You're fighting over the money, you're fighting over the insurance money, you're fighting over the will already. You see people in mourning, you only hug certain people. The people you don't know, you don't hug. uh I seen that, the people, how you sit in the front row, and as the people go by during the wake, you hug the members who lost their loved ones. But then there's certain people that wouldn't hug you or wouldn't console you, like funny little weird stuff like that. The political aspects of it too. And so I don't do funerals. I'm just not emotionally attached to no home going, no funeral. And I know people will kind of feel like that's funny style of me to do that, but it's just a known thing. I tell everybody I don't go to funerals, so don't even ask. I have done personal, private memorial services for family members. Yes, I have. Um, I'll help with obituaries, graphic memorial, designs and whatnot like that. As far as uh, memory, keeping a memory alive and whatnot. Like I don't mind doing stuff like that, and even private, uh in my like personal, like and like just me, and doing a homegoing service for a loved one. I have done that too, and that's just private, but I don't go to funerals. So I know I might have offended people, like, oh, you didn't go to this person's funeral, you didn't go to that person, you don't know what type of prayers and my own little funeral I had for them, my own little ceremony that I had for them. Just because I didn't want to go and be around a bunch of fake motherfuckers and act like we missed them. I ain't seen them in years. I ain't seen them in 10 years. What the hell I'm going to show up acting like was in their life for? I hadn't talked to them in 5 years. So I just don't do that. But I will, you could plant trees in a lot of people in people's name now, people's memory now. That's always a good way to give back. Just plant a tree. That's all you got to do, to remember them. Maybe send a card of flowers to the family, to the loved ones, and even the gift card if you got extra. What you know, to me, I just never did funerals. And for one, like I said, I if I believe in cremation, or a tree pod, a wood casket, something real simple. And you know how they got the tree pods now. I actually want to share a picture of that. Like that, and you got to tell people what you want. Like, do not resuscitate. You have to say, do not resuscitate. You're not donating nothing to science. And that's go for me as Jenny and Stanley. Do not resuscitate. I'm not donating nothing to science. No experimentation, nothing. And simple, either cremation out in nature, the rivers, whatever, or simple burial, the tree pod burial, something real simple. I'm gonna show you the pictures of it. This is it right here. It's like a tree pod burial. Oh, Boli says her father was buried Islamic style. Wow. Wow. And see, that's also, you know, that's like a tree pod. They got that now. So I guess the body would go in there. There's supposed to be like some sort of tree or something. Or you can also do a cremation pod too. If you don't, either this is, a cremation pod or a body pod. Okay, but you also want to specify, make sure you specify what you want as far as your loved ones to do for you. Because people, you know, will try to push it. Like you have to say, like, don't donate no, you ain't donating no nothing. No organs, no plasma, no nothing to science, none of that. Or to no one else or to anybody else, none of that. No, you don't believe in none of that. You have to say no, absolutely not. You don't even need to be all in the hospital. You know, this is something that really they don't. If you was back in the day, would you even have all that stuff, people involved in all of that? You know, that's the stuff between you and your family is supposed to take care of. That's what the social libertarian framework is about. Very limited government, very limited institution and bureaucracy. Like but also the socialist aspect of things, because there is certain mechanisms in place where you look out for your vulnerable and your elders, as far as children, your elders, and making sure you have critical services that is provided for by a people oriented system, so people have more say over the services they get, um and in a socialist aspect. But the libertarian aspect is that there is significantly um there's limited extra, like that's like way less than even what the Republicans are pushing. It's libertarian in nature. It's libertarian. And but if you were under that, if you looking at you when you think about it, back in the day, before all this commercialization, before all this bureaucracy, you wouldn't have had these huge hospitals you had to go to and all this stuff. It was your local doctor that had to visit you, that visited your place of residence, the neighborhood doctor. You had land, so the body would be buried by your family member on your own land. You didn't have to go rush them to the hospital because they dying of a fucking heart attack. What's the point of you rushing to the hospital for? It's already too late. If you can't pop a hundred thousand heat unit cayenne pepper, and you ain't got no electric pulse shocker thing, then they are goner anyways. I don't know what you sitting there trying to rush them, call the ambulance for. I mean, people go do whatever they want, but I just think it's foolishness. A lot of the ways society handles all this bureaucratic and all these third party factors inside of family business. You know, um, but yeah, like I'm not saying it's no cure, nothing like that. I have to be careful what I say, but 100,000 heat units of cayenne, that stop. This is what they say. I'm not saying it's secure. You have to go look at allegedly. That could stop a heart attack right in its tracks. Um, you have certain heat units and certain peppers, and you could feel immense, like your body would start sweating instantly. Your whole body would turn hot. You ever had like certain peppers, and the circulation, it'll kickstart your circulation. Your heart will start beating faster. Your blood will start you feeling warmer. You start sweating profusely. If you eat certain peppers or heat units, certain things you just should have on deck. As a part of your herbal regimen, anyways, and that's one of them. But make sure if you're doing that for upkeep, make sure you have a item of food in your belly, because that 100,000 heat units like that, you don't know what's that could do to your stomach. And if you eat that on an empty stomach, by accident, you most likely gonna throw it back up. It has happened to me. I thought I had got the 45,000 heat unit. It wasn't. It was 100,000 heat unit. I took it in the morning, and then it'll come back right back up because your stomach is empty. It's gonna burn a hole through it, damn near. So if you want to take it as far as maintenance, you're gonna have to have food in your belly first, and drink enough water with it, at least 8 ounces to 16 ounces, or else you're gonna get the heartburn, and it's gonna come back up. It's gonna be feeling like burning. You're gonna feel your belly burning. I'm telling you from experience. It's going to, and then when you go to the bathroom, it's going to take like somebody. Imagine you having an incense, right? You light that incense up, right? You know how that incense is. Imagine, that's how. Imagine you taking the tip of the incense right on your ass, right on your asshole, and it's going to be burning. It's going to hurt. It's going to, with that cayenne, with 100,000 heat units of cayenne, it's gonna feel just like that is a tip of a heated ass incense, and you just take it and put it right on your ass, like That's what it's gonna feel like. So you wanna be careful. I'm telling you, you wanna be careful with that cayenne. But what I'm saying is, back on topic, things supposed to just be real holistic around here. I don't understand like all of this hoopla, even around funerary rites. You're making that all complicated. They're making that like how you the consumerism, like how they do on Christmas with wanting a big spending. They doing that with the funerals too now, big spending. And so don't feel the need for vanity and vexation or ostentation. Don't break the bank or go into debt. Now, if you got it, you got it. If that's within your range and that's you like big, you know, big spending, then that you can't hate on nobody because they got it like that. But I'm just saying for those that's trying to keep up with the Joneses, that's not the right approach. We don't all have to. It's not going to be a one size fit all type of thing. That's why we covered various styles. I would say don't judge people's funerary style. You can opt out of that whole culture. Like I said, people already know. Don't call me to tell me, are you going to, or don't even ask, are you going to so and so's funeral? It's a no. I'm not going to their funeral. It's nothing personal. It's no. I have private ceremonies, private prayers, memorial services. I don't like to be around a lot of energy, anyways. And so, don't judge people's funerary style. And don't feel pressure to be fake during their death. If you know you ain't fuck with them when they was living, don't act like you fuck with them when they dead. You know, I remember, some people. I remember I'll never forget this pastor, and he was kind of like a mega pastor. And I never forget when he said his grandma died, and he said she was so evil, and he said when she died, you know he was supposed to act like he's supposed to be crying, but he said underneath, he said he had the grin. You know how he used to show Bugs Bunny with the grinning, how Bugs Bunny used to do that grin. He said he had that grin on his face when he found out that his grandmother had died, low key. And this was a grown ass black man. He was well in his 40s, and he said when he found out she was dead, because he said she was evil to him as a kid. So that's what he remembered. And he said he had to go to the funeral and give the service because he's the pastor. So obviously, it's your grandma. You're gonna go and do and give the eulogy. You're gonna go and run the service. And he's thinking in his head, like, how is he gotta act like he's sad and he misses her and and people are crying. And he said as they was doing all that crying and moaning, and as he acting all grandma, he said, if you remember that Bugs Bunny smile, when Bugs Bunny used to do something, he used to look at and he used to do that smile. And he said that's how he felt inside of his soul, what upon his grandma being dead. That's what he said out his own mouth as he was giving the service and everything. He said he had to act like he was shedding tears and shit. And so that's fake. But at the same time, I mean, he was literally the pastor. So well, who else is gonna do it? And so we have to, if you ain't you ain't know that person like that, what you sit up there rolling all on the motherfucking floor. Y'all fell out. You ain't talked to him in 10, 20 years. When he asked you for money, you said no. You was talking shit behind them, behind their back when they was living. You was gossiping. You was being a monitoring spirit. You was being a weirdo. You was being a hater. Why was you up there showing up to the funeral screaming all on the floor? Wanting to sit up all in the front, act like you knew the motherfucker, trying to clout chase us, crying all on it, hanging all on the on the side of the casket, talking about little Johnny and little Rashawn. Oh, Rashawn. And we were missing. He was a pest in the community. He was a new menace to society. He was a drug dealer and all this shit. Now we got to act like he was the second coming. Get your motherfucking ass on. You weren't about shit, and he was better off dead than living anyway. That's what many of us was thinking. He was sitting there right at the funeral home thinking that shit. He was better off dead anyway. He was beating his baby mama. He was doing drugs. He was a fucking crackhead. He be saying all types of shit in your head about him right at the funeral. He wasn't about shit anyways. He was a gang. People be saying, "Oh, I've heard it." That's why I stopped going to funerals. I said, "Oh, if that's how y'all do people, I really don't have uh time for that." I was shocked. I said, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that." And they talk about these guys. They talk about thug and all that. He was a thug or whatever. What they say, sometimes your family member, they was a dope boy, they was, and they died. Met a violent death, got shot. How many have got stabbed? How many of you had that scenario? And growing up, I've seen stuff like that too, where you have a reputation for living by the sword and dying by the sword, as they say. And now everybody's crying and mourning, but he have taken other people's child out. So you literally would know about that type. That's why I don't do funerals. And then they say showing this thug life, as they say. And I don't know if you guys, they used to say the black woman they say the black woman loved to date a thug. The black woman loves to date a thug. I remember thinking in my head, like that never fit me. And you want to know why? I'm gonna show you why. We about to go on a route tangent, but just follow me. Y'all remember this song? Because it's going this everybody had a crackhead cousin that ended up dying, right? Everybody had a crackhead cousin that ended up dying. So just follow me here. And we talk about as far as the segue into funerals. Do anybody remember this song called Thug Lovin'? It was by Bobby Brown and Ja Rule. This shit came out when I was a little ass kid. I'm about to look up the date that it came out. Because this was when this was the name of the song. This was my introduction. This came out in 2002. I was 8 years old in 2002. Real talk. And so when this came on, this particular song, Thug Lovin', and I saw the way Ja Rule and Bobby Brown Bobby Brown in particular. Now, everybody know in the hood, it was kind of, when we saw this video, I remember hearing adults. I'm 8 years old, and I heard adults saying Bobby Brown high as Pootie Tang, because he was high in the video. So I remember this video coming on, and I remember a bunch of adults that were Negroes. They were laughing at the Bobby Brown video and at this Thug Loving video. And I kept asking, I said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "He high as Pootie Tang. He a crackhead." They was talking about his drug use. They were talking about, look how he, his mouth was all twisted. He high as hell. And so when I heard this term crackhead, and then I'm looking and I hear the word Thug Loving, I'm hearing him singing Thug Loving, and I'm hearing all the people saying, "Hey, Bobby Brown's a crackhead" at 8 years old. Bobby Brown's a crackhead. And I'm looking at this video called Thug Loving. Then I'm seeing him doing all this crazy wild dancing. Everybody know Bobby Brown was getting it in the video. I'm not, look, I know this man. It's Bobby Brown. Y'all know who Bobby Brown is. He doing all this dancing, all this wild ass. It wasn't even like it was good dancing. You know what I mean? It was just wild ass dancing. And I was thinking in my head, like, that's Thug Loving. So Thug, crackhead, weird dancing on the screen. And at 8 years old, my mind obviously has pattern recognition and just being a logical motherfucker. Well, I don't like Thug Loving. I don't want Thug Loving. And then I'm seeing something that say Murder Inc. come on the screen as a kid at 8 years old. Murder, Thug, Loving, crackhead, Bobby Brown, crackhead, weird dancing in the video. And then I immediately associated that with your crazy crackhead cousin. How everybody had a uncle, a crackhead uncle or a basehead uncle, and they was wild, dancing like their mouth to the side, and I know you're in that rough ass voice. No, you're getting bored dealing with him. I know you in my loving, thug loving. And as a kid, I'm thinking I don't want thug loving. So when they grow up saying the black woman likes a thug, I literally, my mind would just start glitching. I'm like, it never computed properly. I could not even process what that concept was because of my mind was so traumatized with this idea of thug loving and the associations with crackhead, the associations with thug, weird, crazy dancing, rough voices, murder ink. Like I'm telling you, as a kid, I remember like every time this song would come on, I would see Black Americans laughing at Bobby Brown, saying he a crackhead. I would see that, and then I would hear this word thug loving, and then I remember thinking, okay, who act like that in my family? That's supposed to be thugs. And I used to see how they was knocking a baby mama upside the head and fighting and punching each other, and that's a thug. At 8 years old, I mean, what thug loving? Where's nerd loving? So then I remember, they had they show Urkel, and it was or smart guy, as a kid, I'm thinking of okay, Urkel. I'm thinking of Bill Cosby. Remember Different Strokes? It was the Cosby Show. Did remember Different Strokes? Not Different World. Was it different? Different. It's a different world from where you come from. That with the HBCUs. I was like, well, HBCUs, a different world. Okay, that's that ain't thug loving. Maybe that's maybe nerds. Like that was the association my mind always, you know, kept in my head. So as I got a teenager, as I started dating, I'm thinking like, just don't do it, thug loving. It had nothing to do with being biased or obviously racially biased or anything like that because I'm Black American. For me, it was just that that honestly, the experience of watching this video, Thug Loving, growing up and seeing Bobby Brown clearly high as hell in a video talking about Thug Loving. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want that. In my mind, I said, well, shit, I don't want that. As an 8-year-old kid, and you're hearing your family members talking about, yeah, he a crackhead. His pootie tang in his video. You can see how he dancing, and I'm thinking like that dancing don't look like as a kid you comparing you seeing good dancing. That don't look like genuine dancing. I don't know what that is, and you think, well, don't date a thug, and so I always thought it was hilarious when I growing up and I heard of see if you wasn't busy dating a thug, you wanted to date a nerd or a date a more down to earth guy, you wouldn't be complaining about being a single mother. And I'm thinking in my well, I'm not a single mother, but I'm thinking in my head, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? All I dated was like nerdy or the squares, introverts. Like I don't want a thug. I don't. What does that even mean? What is a thug? I'm thinking, what Bobby Brown thug loving? Who's attracted to that? But then you see how that subliminal programming kind of programmed the Black community because I remember there was you would hear certain people talk about they want to date the dope boy, the boy the bad guy, the guy with the edge, and they say the good guys finish last, or they didn't want the good guy. In my mind, I didn't want the bad guy. Like I don't know, I just to me that wasn't appealing. That was not appealing. I always found those guys pretty toxic. Um, they had this show. They used to had that movie. What's that? So not Stella's Got a Groove Back. It's one of the damn. What was it? It was one of them damn. I'm trying to think. It was Medea with Kimberly Elise or something like that. Damn, what was that? It was not Why Did I Get Married? It was right on the tip of my tongue. I know I could look it up. Let me see. I'm about to look it up actually because it's really bothering me. Okay, what was that? And then her name was Kimberly Elise. What was that movie she played in? Diary of a Mad Black Woman. There we go. I'm like, forget that. Or for colored girls. When they used to show that Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and then that guy that, I think he was a bus driver or something, and with the braids and the do rag and bandana and all that, you know, um, he was promoted as the one she should have been going with versus that high powered, I think he was a attorney or whatever his job was, you know. And really neither, it should be a chemistry thing. It should be a chemistry thing. It doesn't have to be uh I mean, obviously you have your standards and your criteria and your pedigree, but you have to go off of chemistry at the end of the day with these type of things. But I was like, why do they always want to promote, some Bob the Builder type guy or some asshole, or it's either some high powered control freak asshole narcissist, or it's the blue collar ex felon. He just got out of jail, and he, with a vendetta and a wife beater on and all that. And I'm like, why do we have to go for why this extremism? Why is this extreme dichotomy? Like, it can't just be something even more normal than that. No. But that was kind of like subliminal programming, because people, I mean, you have a song called Thug Lovin'. I know you're getting bored dealing with him. I know you miss my loving, thug loving, thug loving. And it's like, why would you get bored dealing with a good with a square? As opposed to dealing with thug loving. What's bored? All that toxic arguing back and forth like baby boy or something. I'm trying to figure out what would I be getting bored, So as a kid, that just always stuck out to me. That always, I said I was really traumatized from dating thugs just based off of this video alone. I'm not gonna play the song, but you know, it go like, I know you're getting bored dealing with him. I know you miss my love and thug love. See, so this is Bobby Brown right here. And so as we were growing up, they would say he was a crackhead in his video, you know? And so obviously that looks pretty fascinating, right there. I thought, but then this right here, it pauses and it's something that says murder on it, right there. And so me as a kid, I didn't think that was a good thing. So I said, okay, thug loving, and you see this word right there, Murder Inc. It doesn't. I'm just saying, as a rational fucking kid. And so this is Bobby Brown. You see all that moving around. That's when Black Americans was laughing, saying he high as hell in a video. And so this was supposed to be what thug loving is. And so I remember thinking, well, I don't, that doesn't appeal to me. See how he moving back and forth? That's thug loving, you know? And look how he come out the car. Look how he about to come out the car. I know you're getting bored dealing with him. I know you miss my loving, thug love. See that right there? Like that was very crazy to me. Like seeing that, like that right there. That did not make me want no thug. This right here. Right, that right there. I was like, that's too rough. As an 8-year-old, can you imagine somebody coming at you like that? I know you're getting bored dealing with him. I love him. See, that was too much for me. As an 8-year-old fucking kid, I was looking at this video traumatized. Like, I do not want that's thug loving. I know you're getting bored. See that? So they were saying he high and crackhead. I remember Black Americans started laughing. They're like, look at Bobby Brown and he high as hell. And so I'm thinking like, okay, so he's a crackhead and that's thug loving. Well, I don't date crackheads. So that you see how they all this movement. That's what they were saying. So that's the thug. That's the thug loving. And so you gotta figure, that that didn't appeal to me. See all of that? Could you imagine? See all of that? See, I'm just saying, if somebody came to me doing with they hat like that in my face, like that's not appealing. How is that appealing to a woman? Look at this. Look at this. That is not fucking appealing, my dude. Oh my gosh. Hey, Maverick. But I was thinking in my head, like, hell no. Hell no. Let's be out of your mind. But that's the thug loving. And mind you, you just seeing Bobby Brown. I wasn't even really paying attention to Ja Rule because all you see is Bobby Brown everywhere. So this was wild to us. See, now look at him right there. Like, he about to go in with his dancing. Watch. You see it? Look at him in the background. So Black Americans were laughing at this as I'm a kid, all the adults. And I'm just looking at the screen like this is supposed to be the thug loving, this dancing like that. That's supposed to be the thug loving. See, look at this right there. That traumatized me. That move right there that he just did. That move right there. That was it. There no thugs for me. That right there. Me seeing him do that dance as a kid, where he do that. Wait a minute, I gotta rewind that part where he do that little slide thing, whatever that little slide thing that he was doing. That right there solidified it for me. When he did that move right there, I was traumatized and said, "Hell no." That right there with the phone, that little slide with that side mouth. Anytime that right there, no thugs for me. But that looked crazy, even as a kid. I was like, hell no, no thugs for me. I mean, Bobby Brown was getting it. Look at it. He even was doing the Tootsie Roll. You see him doing the Tootsie Roll? Look at it. Look at him. Now I want to get him doing that Tootsie Roll. He doing a Tootsie Roll in the background, y'all, right there. So, it was just too much. And this like all of that, that's too much for me. He all of that, that's thug loving. This bring back so many memories of when I was 8 years old. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. 8 years old seeing this stuff, I was like, oh no. Ooh. That's it. Thug loving. And I know you're getting bored dealing with him. I know you miss my loving, the loving. And I know you're getting bored dealing with him. Y'all should hear it. See that right there? I said, no, I don't know what I'm not getting bored at all, actually. As opposed to that kind of dancing. Jumping all over the place. And then he said, "It's murder." At the end, hell no. And then they say the black woman. Then they say every 6 hours a black woman getting killed. This is what it's coming from. I'm telling you, it's subliminal programming. Look at the side mouth and all that. It's murder. Then they say the and she's getting killed every 6 hours, and her interpersonal violence stats is 35 times more likely within even her within when you account for proportion within the community alone. And then they say, well, it's because she's the proximity to other black people. it's still 34 times more higher than other people within the proximities of a particular ethnic group. And so what I'm saying is, that the music, you have to, coming at I'm not attacking Ja Rule or Bobby Brown. I'm just saying that's where when you hear, stuff like that, I'm saying that was a very vivid memory at 8 years old. And for me, I was able to deduce that's something I didn't want, but I remember other people kind of swooning over that stuff, so kind of, some of the teenagers or some of the young adults thinking they had men that were just like acting just like that and dressing just like that and looking just like that. And so I've seen it. We've seen the young girls. They was in college. They want to date the dope boy. They in this. They want to date the pimps. They want to date whatever. So it's a thing. It's. I saw it. I saw it growing up. I used to just be shaking my head like, I'll take Steve motherfucking Urkel's ass. I was the type of guys I would. They were really really nerdy. And everybody they would consider uh the lame or whatever. I didn't give a damn. Shit, are you a nice guy? Are you fucking nice to me? I never got into that. The good was the nice guy. What's it called? The bad guy thing where the girls like the bad guys because of the edge or something. Like, no. Like, are you fucking nice to me? I'm a nice person, and I'm a kind person, and I want someone that's kind and that's intelligent. I'm intelligent. I want to at least have a conversation. I'm spiritual. I want another person that I'm talking to that's spiritual. I don't want a thug. It's this thug loving thing. You know what I mean? They talk about crackhead. I'm like, crackhead uncle that is just stealing money from his mama's purse. Stealing money at the mama's purse, $20 out of mama's purse and shit. And then knocked and snuck through the house or the window and then stole the damn TV out the house to go sell it for some crack. Why would I want to, in my head, I'm thinking that these are the type of associations I was making. I said, well, crackheads go and steal from their money from their grandma or their mom. Well, that's thug. Why would I want to date that? And so that's what I said at 8 years old. But um, nonetheless, um, I wanted to show some New Orleans funerary rites. I know I got off into a tangent, but I was really I was cracking up, and I think the beat of that song is actually really good. I don't want to just tear it down to smithereens, but that dun, 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 it's something about that beat was actually very fucking dope. Of that thug loving song. And I know you're looking for do, do. I know you miss my that it's actually dope. I just didn't agree, I'm just thinking it's a thug loving thing. But the actual beat and the composition of it itself it's a good song. It's not a bad song, but because Bobby Brown he can sing. He can sing. So he ain't gonna act like he can't sing. But when he was they say I was 8 years old at the time. What the fuck do I know about crack or who's a crackhead or not? I'm saying what I heard the elders in my family saying when we was watching that video. They say, "Oh, yeah, it's all about," because they were fans of Bobby Brown. So they said, "That's all Bobby Brown new song." And they thinking of MC. No, was it not MC Hammer days? What's that group he was in? They thinking of them days. And so they know. That's why they say, "Oh, he a crackhead." That's where that came from. Just saying, this is just cultural stuff. People could judge it. Think I'm not attacking anyone. I know it's for one, I send my condolences. I hope he's in good spirits and in good health, especially losing important family members to him. So this is not like I'm not attacking Bobby Brown. It's just like it's my frame of reference as far as literally a childhood memory. That's literally quite it. And thinking of like that song is what prevented me from actually dating thugs. That song right there, that dancing on wow, this somebody else. Because I'm telling you, when I was, on everybody know Delavan is good. You waiting on the bus for Delavan, niggas want to try to talk to you. And when I used to see them doing all that with that dress and that hat, like all on my face, oh, that's the thug. I want to talk to him. And I used to literally go into the bus or something to go to church or the Delaware Park to go play basketball or something, or go hang out or go to the mall or something. I'm like, and they coming all in your face with that same type of voice and energy and hat all in your face and hand all. Hell no, that's the thug. And I'm like, I went to CSAT, niggas. We had to wear polos every day. We had to wear like literally polo or the blouse, uh, bow tie. The boys had to wear the bow tie or a tie or a vest with a polo, not a t-shirt. Okay, not a wife beater, not a tank top, not a hoodie. Polo. Like literally, that's the environment. Like that was the school before you had to wear the polo. So the boys were wearing the polo with the khaki pants with the creases in them, plaid khakis, with the like work pants. That was the uniform, and the black shoes. That was the uniform. The girls had to wear the same thing or skirts and dresses, and so that's literally what I'm like, that's what I was seeing at the time. So I'm like, for polo tucked in with the belt, and it had the polo had to be tucked in. That was the uniform of the school. Like you would get sent home if you didn't have that proper uniform on, tucked in with the belt. And I don't even like uniforms. But I'm just saying at that time, that's what the environment I was in. We were wearing polos, wearing blouses. It had to be iron, can't be wrinkled. They used to say that's what the paper used to literally say. Iron, creases. I used to have the crease down the middle of the pants, creases in the middle of the pants. Okay, iron the clothes, iron your clothes. That's what the paper used to say. Make sure you iron any wrinkles out. Bow tie or tie. If you're doing boys, if you're blouses, or polos, you didn't have to have a bow tie if you had the polo on. And so that's what it was. But we're gonna look at Big Mama Thornton in a little bit too, ball and chain. I am gonna play. I hope I'm not risking. I know if you hear it not there during playback, we had to remove it for copyright. But I want to give people that, especially Gen Zs, the younger generation, that experience of learning about Big Mama Thornton, because she's before my time. I'm 1992. She's in 1970, and so very fascinating voice. Oh my gosh, it was the most fascinating energy that I had seen in a long time. I said Big Mama Thornton and Buddy Guy, and so they do blues, and so we're going to look at a little. They do American folk blues. So they're taking a deep dive into Negro culture, and Negro is the historical term that a classification that is on a lot of genealogy records and birth certificates and death certificates and draft cards. So that's why I'm using that. But obviously, this would be Black Americans, and a lot of Black Americans that fall under that umbrella as far as having that Negro ancestry. Now, when I say Black American, I am spelling it BLAQUE because of the gematria under it that I created that relates to being cosmic, being of melanin being, cosmic being, spiritual being, but also of Black nobility. If you have Negro ancestry and American Indian ancestry, particularly going back to certain coats of arms and surnames as it relates to the Scottish Irish area, as well as some of the admixtures over here from West of Keeblan, convergence with, even though we say Scottish Irish, those the term would be the Swarthy or Sephardic Moors that came over from that area. Now, you look at the documentation and say Swarthy or it'll say Moor. But when you look at the records around the context of why they left, it's the Jacobite Wars. So that's why you hear the term Sephardic Moors. That's why you hear that. Now, that doesn't apply to all of Black Americans at all. Okay, that's something you tie together via your coats of arms and the dates that you know of certain genealogy records and your surname. So that doesn't apply to all of us. So that's why I say BLAQUE, Black American, and that's why you still hear me using the word Negro. It's not to degrade. It's just that that's what's on the records, and that history ties to some of the justice claims that we have in this country in terms of that classification. We're talking about thousands and thousands of patents under Negro classification, birth certificates, death certificates, records, and then they move that off the books and then give you new classifications. You deviate further from that history. You deviate. It's easier for them to bury it essentially. And they can get rid of civil rights laws and change things and changed history. What you teach in schools. This is what they're doing now. You're not allowed to teach certain things in school. You can't teach slavery. They're trying to crack down on teaching civil rights and stuff. All of that stuff was under Negro classification. And so now that's why you keep hearing me say the word Negro, because the government was certainly actively trying to remove that classification and term completely out of history, which is the classification that is on all of the documents, even birth certificates of even living family members today. Yes, living family members today. Many of them still have Negro on their birth certificate to this day. And so that's why you hear me, is not to degrade people, is not to use antiquated terms. Obviously, you know, we use Black American interchangeably. I just spell it Blaque, but the pronunciation is the same, Black American. So I use that interchangeably, but you'll hear me say Negro because it's algorithmically, I'm trying to warm up the algorithm to that term. If it works, it works. And if not, then it is what it is. But you're going to hear me continue to say that term to destigmatize it because it's a cute word. It's a beautiful word. Instead of want to say Negro, you move the GR, you get Neo. You remove the GR, you get Neo, like Neo in the Matrix. Like ain't Negroes motherfucking Neo? Like what are you doing? The one. Look, you spell that backwards, you get one. One grow, Neo grow. Now you put the GR back there. Jacobean science, you could put an O on it. So Neo grow. You can get Neo grow from there. You could put an O on there. Technically, you can. You could put AH. You get gra. You get a variation of gra. That's like a great mother type energy. Gra. The word gra. Then you can remove the G. You get Ra. You get sun. That's the sun. Like that's a name for the sun. SUN. So the Negro got a lot of science embedded in there because it's coming from that term that nigga, which is still relating to the Nagas, snake gods of the river that formulate complex sciences and definitions behind words, around words. And so Negro is not a bad word. Now, obviously, people try to use it to be belittling, or they use it in degrading context. And that's not the way we should see that. Like I said, you remove that GR, you get Neo. You spell it backward, you get one. You put the GR back on it, you can add the O, you get Neo grow. Um, it's a lot you could probably do with that. It's a lot. It's a lot that you could do with that term Negro in terms of the science behind it. So there's nothing wrong with the term Negro, though it is a misclassification because it amalgamates a group of people under one term, even though they may have various genealogy. So you may have someone that genealogy records point them back to Scotland, Ireland. But that's not every Black American, though a lot of Black Americans have Irish surnames. Then you got some that's more of a American indigenous. They getting lumped in under Negro too, and then you got some that has African transatlantic blood or even African nobility blood, because there was a nobility class that the African Brotherhood, that was their nobility class. They were not slaves, just like the Free African Society that was over here in the late 1800s. Those were not slaves. They were in the Philadelphia area. You can look this up: Free African Society or African Brotherhood. Those were actual Africans, but they were the elite class over here. They don't talk about that stuff, but it's obvious. Free African Society, they were not. But then you have another one that's called Negro or Colored, and you see the Colored, and they were calling themselves MGM, which is multi-generationally mixed, because they were labeled Cherokee on their paperwork. This is documented history. I can't just make this shit up. I'm a researcher. I saw it on records already. I seen it right at the same time. You got Black Americans using this term MGM, which is multi-generationally mixed, calling themselves colored and Negro around the same time, around 1775 up into the 1800s. At the same time, you have another group that's saying that they are African Free Society. They didn't use the term color. They didn't use the term Negro. These are two different groups. That group is in Philadelphia. They free. Now they did abolition work, but they weren't slaves. And so you got like these different groups of people, and they all got amalgamated under the term Negro. They all got amalgamated under the term Black, because the government kept reclassifying us for one final ethnocide agenda. As you can see what they were pulling today. They completely buried the Jacobean history, Jacobean blacks from the black nobility from the Irish Moor, from the Scottish Irish area, that also convergence with England. That's completely buried. All them people look like either their status is white in history as far as the documentation, or you just think it's a white person when you see it. In your family, as far as the coat of arms and the surnames, you just assume that it's a white person. Um, so that's completely buried history. The Dravidian over here, buried history. The Pacific slave trade itself is buried history. So like all the niggas that came from Fiji over here, all the niggas that came from South America over here, even there was a small group of Aborigines from Australia that came over here. All that's buried history, but that's the Pacific slave trade. And the only thing they buried the African nobility, that was a total separate class, because they was the ones that was selling the Africans on the transatlantic slave trade. Buried history. So it was just this final push to get people off of the land, as far as any copper colors that were over here, just totally remove them from the land and legalese, and put blanket all Black Americans under one classification that don't describe them, and then put DNA tests so we can study their blood, but never promote genealogy to them. And that's why I've always been against DNA tests for a long time. I mean, I've been screaming. I would be talking for hours on. I remember this app called Clubhouse that was out. I used to be talking for hours, 36 hours straight, teaching Black Americans do not get DNA tests. And I took so many hits for that. You have no idea how many hits I took for, like, reputation wise, professional wise, because they were pushing that Pan African stuff and DNA tests and all that stuff. And I knew that it was a farce. I knew that was a way for them to study Black American bloodlines and DNA, and not fun about finding no home in Africa. You find your ancestry. I knew that wasn't about none of that. None of that. So I was pushing against it, because the science itself, some of the methodologies has limitations. And then some of these clauses was allowing them to sell your DNA to pharmaceutical companies for military um, purposes, um, research purposes. Like, I already knew that stuff they was doing it. And so that was a real thing. And so I'm telling you, I sounded like a broken record. If I'm telling you, they was pushing all that Black Americans do, and it was only Black Americans, nobody else in the world. I knew that. I was so suspicious of that. I said, they're not promoting that test. Well, they was doing it to the white Americans for a bit, and some of the white Britain, because they was trying to get some codes. I'm just, to be real. They was really trying to. So I remember they was promoting that. But then after they was done promoting to them, it was like a huge thing for them to promote that to Black Americans. And I just was like, something not right about that. That's weird. I mean, it just was like, it was zeroed in, and I instantly go on alert with stuff like that. Instantly. My soul would know something ain't right about that. And so 2020, 2021, when they was pushing that on us, I mean, I'm saying 36 hours straight, for 72 hours straight on Clubhouse, just teaching Black Americans do not do the DNA. I mean, and it used to be screaming matches. It used to be screaming matches, because I felt like I was fighting, for lack of better words, it felt like I was fighting the devil. Like, it's a group of people telling Black Americans to go and put their DNA in these banks, and then you got another group that's literally telling them not to, and they trying to call us self-haters because we don't want to be Africans, and it was like we don't give a shit about none of that. It ain't got nothing to do with none of if we advance, the Negro is supposed to be so advanced where they can go and talk to their motherfucking ancestors in their dreams. Whether we don't care what ethnicity they are. Some of them gonna show up Caribbean, some of them gonna show up African, Chinese, or some shit, Indian or whatever. So what the fuck is you talking about, nigga? And then nobody is mad because somebody is. I couldn't believe I said nigga. I just had a bunch of primal Akibalon niggas just visit me the other day. I'm thinking in my head back in 2020, they was like, y'all just don't want to be African because it's gonna come back and say it. I'm like, bitch, like we be getting. I'm like, I done saw primal, I done seen some shit. So that's you got to build your own direct connection though with your ancestors. That ain't no DNA test gonna get that to you. You want a name, you do your genealogy record. That could really wake some shit up. You do that genealogy, that's spiritual business right there. But you ain't gonna wake no shit up from no damn DNA test. If you got some supposed African ancestors, you got some supposed Akibalon ancestors, and you in America and you say you Negro, let's say you do got them. Let's say you do. I guarantee you, based on your admixture and based who they rounded up, they only rounded about 300,000 of them to bring on America, right? Based on who they rounded up, they were very methodical and very specific of who they got. It was 300,000 of them they brought over here, right? To North America. They say 12, I'm saying 300,000 on record, around 3% of the transatlantic slave trade were over here brought to North America. That is a very specific bloodline that they went after, that had 12 strand, okay, 12 strand DNA, certain star systems, okay. You can say I'm crazy all day, I don't give a damn. Star systems, okay. And my point is, if you a Negro over here in America and you supposedly got some West Akibalon ancestors somewhere, they gonna roll up on you in your motherfucking dreams. I guarantee you. If any of you, for those who, I'm not talking to the American Indians, I'm talking about for those who do. If you truly, truly got a West Akibalon ancestor and you're a Negro in America, based on what I know of that bloodline and the people they went and got over there and brought over here, they ran up on you already in your motherfucking dreams. Okay? They the ones that told your ass not to go and get the DNA test. They the ones that'll tell your ass, you better not go and get a motherfucker's nothing. Because you don't know shit about your DNA. They telling you better not go and do it. They already rolled up on your ass. If just like if you truly got an American indigenous, like an actual indigenous ancestor, and you're in America and you're calling yourself Negro or you're Black American, they already ran up on your motherfucking ass in the dream. What you going to get a DNA test for? They already ran up on your motherfucking ass in the dream and said, "Hey, I'm so and so." Just like if you got a Jacobean, if you actually, these supposed to be the Hebrew bloodline, if you're actually that, and you're actually Black nobility, and you had some ancestor from Scottish Ireland that fought in the Jacobite, some of the in them orders that was gatekeeping and safeguarding sacred knowledge of of a of an interdimensional bloodline. They already rolled up on your ass. Is the point? Or they will. If they haven't already, they will. If you actual Negro, they gonna roll up on you in your dreams and tell you what I'm telling you. As far as don't go in mess, don't be giving them the science and all that stuff. Keep it simple. Know who you are. Know thyself. Develop a intuition and knowing, but also have logic too. You want instinct and intuitive instinct, but you also want your logic mechanisms and under control too. Because too much in any extreme, you're going to become either mechanistic or you're going to become spiritual psychotic. So you want to keep a balance at all times. Yeah, but don't listen to them people tell you you go get a connection if you go and give your blood. You ain't giving no connection to nothing. If you go put your swab of spit How you know you gonna get a connection by the most connection you gonna get is either through your own spiritual awareness and then your genealogy records. That's the most that's the most your ass gonna get. But let's look at these funeral rites from New Orleans. Okay, so we can run up off of here. This ain't gonna be no super long video. I've been trying to get better with my time. Is it gonna play? Okay, so these are the Buster Browns. These are the Buster Brown shoes, church shoes that they used to wear. And this is in New Orleans. That's the Buster Brown church shoes. How many of you had those growing up? I had them growing up. That's the Buster Brown shoes that you wear to church. Everybody had a pair. See that they dance with the coffin on them? They do that. Yeah, that's in New Orleans. Is this New Orleans? Oh, wait a minute. It ain't New Orleans. Is this wait a minute. I knew they looked too dark. That ain't no New I ain't saying ain't dark is a bad thing. It just didn't. This is the same practice they do in Ghana though. So that's where some of the influence come from. That's not New Orleans. This is New Orleans. Here we go. My bad, guys. That ain't New Orleans. I said that don't look like no Black American. I knew the Buster Brown shoes though. I said that. That's kind of funny because you can see the similarities, and there is similarities. I mean that particular practice is, I mean, it's pretty fucking obvious. I couldn't even tell until I looked. I said, "Wait a minute, that ain't." But I think that's where some of the practices come from. Because that ain't no New Orleans. I said, wait a minute, I don't remember. I said, let's go to actual New Orleans. Okay, so now this is New Orleans. So that's the one where they're dancing with the umbrellas. But you see that style. That's what West African style, West Akibalan style, and that's New Orleans. So some of the practices you could clearly see, especially that dance with that coffin. That's now this is in America. Okay. Now here's another one. This is in America too. And so there's a lot of dancing. I think I might be able to play this. Let me see what this is. And you saw they doing that same thing in I think that was Ghana. So that's a clear similarity. See, but you see they look different. I ain't gonna hold you. That's why I said when I was like, I don't recall Black American. You can see the difference, but you also see the similarities, but you can clearly see the difference. So you see that? So now let's look at this last one. This is a jazz funeral demonstration. So there's a lot of jazz. Play too much of that, but you can see. You can see some of the similarities to that other one. They dress to the nines. Mm-hmm. See, but you get the point. That's also New Orleans jazz funeral style. And so I didn't see much of that up north, and certainly not in Buffalo. A lot of people from Buffalo are from the North Carolina area. And so I do have to say I didn't quite see that, but I think in that particular area that's coming from that it found its way in that particular area of New Orleans. And I find it interesting that there's a version of these type of practices in Ghana. I'm not promoting, I'm just saying, like, I didn't even realize that this wasn't even New Orleans until until I started looking at the background of stuff. Once I started looking at the background, I said, that's not New Orleans. Like, I look at the ground and all that, and some of the, and then I said, I said that ain't. But you see some of the same practices. See, that's really wild. But see, they still do some of the same. That's still some of the same thing. So you can't say there's, like, there's some people over here that clearly got some of these type of practices still in their repertoire of even cell memory at the very least. And that's really interesting and fascinating, especially the Buster Brown shoe thing. So who copied who? Came first, the chicken or the egg? That's that they're gonna have the American Indians and the black and the Africans, but I guess they'll be arguing, fighting about that. I hope not. I hope not. But that's what I'm saying. I hope you guys. I hope you guys don't be fighting over that next. But I wanted to play uh Mama Thornton, and this is from the Archives of Reeling in the Years production. Um, Again, if it gets removed, if I have to remove it, it's because of copyright. But I really thought her voice was just amazing. So
I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure to me to have to be with Buddy Guy since 1965 in Europe. This is a song I wrote, made famous by me and Janis Joplin. I wrote this tune called Ball and Chain. I hope you like it. Sitting by.
I believe Janis Joplin redid. Or not redid, or sung this song that was written by her, called Ball and Chain, that was written by Big Mama Thornton. I think that hat is cold. I mean, that is a nice ass hat. But I just thought this was so it was such a powerful performance.
I'm a window. Whoa!
I love that voice. That voice, her voice is so powerful.
Sit by my window, yeah.
You know what I
Lord,
think is fascinating? Like her scarf is actually snake pattern if you pay attention. And this hat is actually it's for those who know, it's a variation. I don't know if I want to give all that out. I think people could pretty much put it two and two together, but that this shape of this hat is also extremely powerful. I think it's very intentional for her to have that type of hat on with those earrings and that pattern of that scarf is, being like a snake kind of almost.
and something struck me. Whoa, clamped on like a bone. Hey, I want to tell you about it. Now listen. I said, oh, baby, why you wanna do these things to me? I said, oh, baby, why you
She wrote that herself. Now that's some talent right there. Like I'm working on a piece, and I'm studying this, this type of sound and studying this that what it takes to create something from the bowels of your motherfucking soul. So I had some melody that came to me in my head around 4 a.m. and I woke up cracking up and it stuck with me. The melody and the harmony of how it should be sung, and then the variations. Like I could see the various notes of it in my mind's eye as I was dreaming. And I said, so I'm working on it. I hadn't even recorded it. I'm just building up it all in my head first. But it's like, you know, tapping into something new, creating something from that soul space. Like she wrote that. She wrote that. And you could hear the way she's singing it. It's coming from an experience. It's raw. It's organic. It's from the soul. It's talent. Like you can't fake that. You can't AI that. You can't industry plant that. Like you gotta motherfucking have it or you don't. Or you be inspired by it if you don't have it, if you're to create in the spirit of that, But I was just like because it's one thing to write. The lyrics are pretty, "Whoa, baby, why'd you do that to me? Why'd you have to do that to me?" But the way she's singing it, like and I'm like, I'm gonna challenge myself to, not I'm not gonna copy her, but like the creation process of like she's saying something that's really is, it's not like these elaborate lyrics, right? It's not elaborate lyrics, but the way she's singing it, I'm like, the frequency of it is so powerful. The performance of it is so powerful and simple. She has simple clothes on. She ain't, you don't see big titties and ass cheeks everywhere. With the scantily, she covered from head to toe, but you feel her talent, you feel her soul, and it's captivating. Now that's not a dig at the girls that like to show skins and whatnot. But I'm saying, how like, you'll see the performance today, you see the Ice Spice, and then you see the scantily clad, very good looking girl, just beautiful girl, and then you see the scantily clad, and it's just like as far as the rapping style, it's very, the style of it is supposed to be bland. And then there you see more playing up with the body. That's the style today. That's the style today. Um, and I guess that's what the Gen Zs and Alphas are exposed to. See, my our style was we came in at the we're salt and pepper, uh, TLC. They had that look. Aaliyah, uh, Maya. You know, they had that the looks was different as far as what we grew up in, and it is more of that '90s look where the girls were kind of androgynous, but still very feminine. So they had the androgynous look, but you could tell they were women. They were straight, you know, but they had that the hip hop look, as they would say, more of a hip hop androgynous look, which honestly was pretty dope. Like if you look at we grew up seeing TLC with T Boss. I'm like, these motherfuckers had like swag for days. Like they had like it was just swagged out. But today it's um it's the more revealing it is I presume the more viral effect they'll have. So showing of the look is called the baddies look, pretty much the baddies with the butt in a breast out mainly, and the baddies look, the 26-inch lace front, that type of look. um I'm not saying good, bad, right or wrong. I'm not judging the eras of like, okay, which I think this is better. I think that's not. I personally prefer something different, but that's the style. That's people follow the trends. But I was more fascinated. I have to say, like, me seeing this, from 1970, compared to 2026, and even me growing up in the '90s, it was different because this wasn't really the seen in the '90s, because that's when the hip hop style had taken over. But this was really fascinating to me, the cadence of the song, how simple it is, but the way she's singing it. I said, damn, and I had got it, this particular song that I'm working on. I'm like, I don't have to really push it, because the song came to me in a dream, and I got the melody and the harmony, but it's like I don't want to just sing it so plainly. Like I need to add some motherfucking ad libs, some scat, and some some all that, ribbon, you know, I'm gonna have it's gonna have to it's gonna be a little bit of the gospel elements in it. Because I said I gotta actually push this shit. I thought that was amazing though, watching this lady. I was truly blown. I'm finished playing it.
You wanna do these old mean things to me.
Live instruments. So these niggas was grooving.
Because you know I love you. And I'm so sick and tired of being in misery. All right. I just want you to play your soul, buddy.
She told him, "I want you to play your soul, buddy. I want you to play your soul," and that's what it's about. Like even when I be there's a technical aspect of music that's very mathematic and very technical, and then there's that intuitive aspect of just soul. What sounds good to the ear? What sounds good? Just do what sounds good. And that sometimes the technicalities are missing. That doesn't make a person any less of a musician or a producer. If especially, it may even make them more, because you have to go by the ear at that point, and you gotta know what sounds unique, creative, pleasant to the ear, the frequency, and that's intuitive intelligence about music, and that's very important. And to be honest, that is the gift of a lot of the Black nobility, and you can hear it. You can hear it in the way the creation of something simple, the way it sounds, the songs, the composition of it, the notes, the genres, the creations. That's clearly a gift. The intuitive science aspect of music. But there is a technical aspect, like knowing all of the equipment, the gears, the chords, sheet music, that the math, the chord, the different notes and stuff, the octaves. Um, and so that's I think it's just as important. Don't get me wrong, because it's certainly a challenge for me to even catch up in that regard. But I do appreciate that intuitive space for her to just say, play your soul. Like, I'm going to rewind that. She just telling him to play your soul. just want you to play your soul, buddy. He's just playing his soul. He's going off of the dome. Nice. I love that sound.
I know you're gonna miss me, baby. Lord, I say you're gonna miss all of those sweet things. Oh, I know you're gonna miss me. No, 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 Lord, all of those sweet things. And then you find out your heart will be like mine. Oh, wrapped up just like that old ball and chain. Whoa, 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 yeah. Hey, 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 baby. Why do everything have to happen to me? Because my love gonna last forever. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I know it's gonna last great day in the morning of for eternity. Ball and chain, great day in the morning. Just turn me a loose. Ball and chain.
Wow. And they also did she also played her harmonica. And so this is like what we say with talent, you know.
From
This is
Chicago,
talent.
Shaky Harden, J.B. Lander, Doc Ross, and John Lee Hooker. We all got a little thing we call it the down home shakedown.
So it's just fascinating because they're saying the shakedown. Don't we still say shakedown to this day? Are we gonna run down the shakedown? They still say shakedown to this day. So we see that talent, you know, I'm showing that just to show, you know, they were all playing the different harmonicas and whatnot. And so she's multifaceted talent, you know. And this was 1965. So that was 1965. How many people was born in 1965? That's way before our time. That wasn't even colored TV. Her name's Big Mama Thornton. So, you know, I'm 1992. So me seeing this, it was like a blast. Like this was even new for me. And so I was like, wow, like this lady's voice, it was captivating. You know, it's like I put you in the mind of Nina Simone. And, you know, you think of, fast forward to 2026, and, it's just a juxtaposition, that's all. It's just the juxtaposition, and it's a challenge because it's like, I know that that's required to create from that organic raw space, but then we have to understand that that infiltration of corporate interests and that infiltration of commodification of music hinders that raw creative space. It stifles it. And the agendas that those engines or that industry now produces is not one that would promote the talent of, say, like a Big Mama Thornton today as it would have during her particular time period. And so, know, we're gonna end it on there. End it on that note because I am gonna get up off of here. Good on time again. I feel like I'm on good on time. Let's see how long it's been. 2 hours and 16 minutes. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. Okay, well, I'm gonna head up off of here. If you're on Rumble, you guys have a great weekend. I know it's Thursday, but have a great weekend. Starting the weekend early. Should end it on there. Okay, so let's end it on Rumble. Okay. Well, I'm at the end it on YouTube. You guys have a great weekend as well. And thanks for stopping by, Bowly Bowly and Maverick Hell.